relating to the Socialist Party posters, one of them reads, "No to privatisation of health and education." One of our members would like to know, how would a ratified treaty make that possible?
Okay, and that's the point. Yes. No, that's the point that it is not stated in the Lisbon Treaty.
Okay.
If you vote yes, your health and education would be privatised. You must look at the Common Commercial Policy section of the two treaties that are being amended and look at the amendments. Now, at the present time, the way the economic affairs of our world are governed is an economic unit like the European Union enters into discussion with other major economic powers, for example in the World Trade Organization, and through that process. And then they work out deals as to what areas of their economy they will open up to each other's multinationals, etc.
Okay.
Right? Now that's quite commonplace with regard to goods. It then has moved into services as well in the last decade or so. Like water, for example, has been a subject where it's traded like a commodity, with major multinational companies buying up water all over the world, etc., to detrimental effect of ordinary people. But up until now, the health and education services have not been subject to that process. And however, the United States government, for example, has been pushing very hard for more than 10 years, and anybody can read the documents that they lodge with the WTO. They've been pushing for the health and education services of countries like the European Union to be opened up to their, for example, for-profit American health corporations as of right, that they would have the right to tender for services, health, etc., because they see it as a source of major profits. Up until now, if a proposal came down the line that yes, following an agreement, the health and education services of every member state of the European Union had now to be opened up to tendering by multinationals to come in as of right, jockey, take profit. Any member state, no such proposal has come. Any member state, however, if it did, could block it.
Okay.
There would be a veto. That veto is removed in the Lisbon Treaty. That's the kernel here. That absolute veto is removed in the Lisbon Treaty. 188C article, or in the consolidated version after Amendment 207. Anybody can read it themselves. And instead it becomes a conditional veto. So if there was a proposal to open up in the way I'm speaking about, a member state would only have the right to veto now if they could prove that such a move would seriously disturb the provision of, say, health or education in that member state. Ireland couldn't prove that if there was a contest or a dispute, considering that the government here has been privatising health, has been given land to American companies and others to build private hospitals on the grounds of public hospitals. So they could not argue that. And then people might ask, should we worry about this when they're privatising sections of the health service anyway? And we should worry a lot about it, because we can kick this government out hopefully sooner rather than later. It has made an incredible, disastrous situation in the health services. But we can kick them out. And we can demand a health service that is transformed, a one-tier, properly resourced, properly funded health service with excellent treatment for everybody. But if the veto is gone, then agreements can be imposed over the head of any government, no matter what it wants, or over the heads of the people. So that's the kernel of the issue here. And when you look at the thrust of economic policy and the huge push towards privatisation, liberalisation, deregulation in the European Union, going back for 2 decades, you know what's coming down the line. So we are absolutely right, in my view, in highlighting this. We get kind of blanket denials from the government and the others, but they've never explained to us. If they say, oh, there's a protocol there, etc., they've never explained to us, why is the veto being removed? Nothing happens in a treaty like this without a lot of thought for how things will work out in the future. And we're talking here about a treaty for decades. Why is the veto being removed? They haven't answered.
Okay. I've been asked to ask you about the 184 minimum wage thing, or the Laval court case, and the fact that it doesn't apply here as we have a minimum wage in law. And this person would love to hear your views beyond that, because no one appears to have asked you.
Well, I've spoken a lot about the whole question of workers' rights. Mm-hmm. Right. Now, the Labour Party and the Congress of Trade Unions and others have been making massive claims for the fact that the Charter of Fundamental Rights will become legal, it will be on a legal footing if Lisbon is ratified. Yes. And they're suggesting that that will have a transformational effect on workers' rights. And I say that is absolutely wrong.
Okay.
And I point, for example, to groups of workers around this country at the present time: Coca-Cola workers, MTL dockers, Manor Park Nursing Home down the country. They're all on strike because they are trying to defend themselves from very serious attack on their wages and working conditions. Right? Mm-hmm. Coca-Cola 130 workers were told you must take a cut of 50 to 60% in your wage, or your work will be outsourced to companies which pay the minimum wage. Right? Coca-Cola is one of the most profitable companies in Europe. That disgusting behaviour is legal in this country. It's legal according to European Union law, and there is nothing in Lisbon that would change that. Nothing. So that, if you like, puts these claims in context. But it's more than that, however. I say that ratifying the Lisbon Treaty would institutionalise the type of judgments that we have coming down from the European Court of Justice, where in 4 well-known cases now, Laval was only one, they have found for the rights of contractors and businesses supplying services across borders to exploit the migrant workers that they have brought from low-wage economies. In Germany, for example, in the state of Lower Saxony, where the local authorities there had certain safeguards to protect migrant workers, the European Court of Justice struck that down and were prepared to endorse the wage of 50% of what the going rate was for construction in that particular area. And they tried to use the Laval judgment simply to say to us, if there had been a minimum wage in Sweden, those Latvian contractors would have had to obey it. This is correct. But you know, the point is this. But that's not the end of the story by any means. Mm-hmm. But in any case, let us stay there for a moment. Let us agree that there wasn't a minimum wage in Sweden, but that the trade unions in Sweden were trying to suggest that the Latvian workers should get the same rate as Swedish workers. Why wouldn't the European Court of Justice support that? Rather than saying in EU treaties law, the freedom to bring in the service or to take a contract out of order allows this contractor to essentially exploit. That's a question. But anyway, it's actually more serious than that, because the most recent judgment was called the Luxembourg judgment. Okay. It was the European Union Commission, the EU Commission itself, took the state of Luxembourg to court, because the state of Luxembourg was insisting that contractors who would come with workers from low-wage economies, that they would have to obey the rules to protect workers like that were in Luxembourg law. Now, those rules were simply, they were demanding the same treatment for the guest workers or the migrant workers or temporary workers, whatever we want to call them, the same treatment as Luxembourg workers. Now, the state of Luxembourg had actually transposed into its law the Posted Workers Directive, which kind of gave the guidelines for how these things should be organised. And the European Court of Justice said, no, you have gone too far. You're making too many demands in the way you transposed this directive.